When a pope's reign ends, whether through death or resignation, the Catholic Church enters a distinctive transitional period, with centuries-old traditions guiding the process of selecting new leadership. This interregnum period involves specific protocols that have evolved over nearly 2 millennia, while maintaining essential continuity in how the Church functions during this time of transition. The immediate aftermath of a pope's departure follows carefully established procedures. Upon a pope's death, the Cardinal Camerlengo, Chamberlain, officially verifies the death, traditionally by gently tapping the pope's forehead 3 times with a silver hammer while calling his baptismal name. This ancient ritual confirms the pope has died and initiates the Sede vacante, vacant seat, period. In the case of resignation, which became relevant, after Benedict XVI's historic 2013 departure, different but equally formal procedures mark the official beginning of the vacancy. The Pope's fisherman's ring and official papal seal are immediately destroyed in a ritual that visibly signifies the end of his authority. This ceremonial destruction prevents any possibility of falsified documents appearing under the previous pope's authority during the transition period. Communication during this time follows strict protocols. The Cardinal Camerlengo, assisted by 3 cardinal assistants, assumes temporary administrative leadership of the Church, though with limited powers. Their primary responsibility is managing practical affairs and preparing for the conclave that will elect the new pope, not making any significant policy decisions or doctrinal pronouncements. While the Sede vacante period unfolds, regular church functions continue through established structures. The Roman Curia, the administrative apparatus of the Catholic Church, continues daily operations, though major decisions and appointments are generally postponed until a new pope is elected. Bishops worldwide maintain their authority over their dioceses, and parish life continues essentially unchanged for ordinary Catholics. Liturgically, the Church enters a distinctive period. Special prayers for the election of a new pope are added to masses worldwide. The papal throne remains visibly empty during ceremonies, and certain prayers specifically mentioning the Pope are modified during this interim period. The most significant activity during this transition is preparation for the conclave, the gathering of cardinals to elect the new Pope. Canon law establishes that the conclave must begin no earlier than 15 days and no later than 20 days after the papal seat becomes vacant. This interim period allows cardinals time to travel to Rome from around the world. Once the conclave begins, the College of Cardinals enters an environment of strict secrecy and isolation within the Sistine Chapel. The voting process follows precisely defined procedures developed over centuries, with each cardinal swearing an oath of secrecy regarding the proceedings. The famous white smoke, signaling a successful election, represents the culmination of this process. Throughout history, these transition periods have occasionally lasted months or even years, though modern conclaves typically conclude within days. The established procedures ensure continuity in church governance while facilitating the selection of new leadership according to traditions that Catholics believe are guided by the Holy Spirit. The conclave process that follows a papal vacancy represents one of the world's oldest, continuous electoral systems, refined over centuries to balance tradition with practical necessities. This gathering of cardinals has evolved from informal assemblies in early Christianity to today's carefully regulated procedure. When the cardinals enter conclave, from Latin conclave, meaning with a key, referring to their seclusion, they become completely isolated from the outside world. All forms of communication, phones, internet access, newspapers, and unauthorized conversations with outsiders are strictly prohibited. This isolation serves both practical and spiritual purposes, preventing outside influence on the election while creating an environment where Cardinals can discern without distraction. The Sistine Chapel becomes the center of this process, transformed from a tourist destination to the church's most sacred electoral chamber. Workers install special flooring to protect Michelangelo's frescoes, 2 stoves for burning ballots, one for the ballots themselves, another for producing the famous smoke signals, and simple tables and chairs arranged in order of cardinal seniority. The stark contrast between the chapel's artistic splendor and the functional simplicity of the electoral furnishings visually reinforces the solemn nature of the proceedings. Each voting session begins with the oath, "I call as my witness Christ the Lord, who will be my judge, that my vote is given to the one who before God I think should be elected." This theological framing reminds cardinals that they are not merely selecting an administrative leader, but discerning who should serve as Christ's vicar on earth, according to Catholic understanding. The actual voting process follows precise protocols. Each cardinal receives a rectangular ballot with "Eligo in summum pontificem," "I elect as supreme pontiff," printed at the top. They write their chosen candidate's name below this phrase, fold the ballot twice, and then, in order of precedence, walk to the altar, holding their ballot visibly raised. Before depositing it, they make another oath. "I call on the Lord Christ, who will be my judge, to witness that I am voting for the one whom, according to God's will, I think should be elected." This deliberate, ceremonial approach to voting, with repeated oaths and public procession, stands in stark contrast to modern democratic elections. The ritual nature emphasizes that Catholics view this not merely as an administrative selection, but as a sacred process through which divine guidance operates through human instruments. After all votes are cast, 3 cardinals serving as scrutineers, vote counters, follow an elaborate procedure. The first scrutineer shakes the container to mix the ballots. The third scrutineer counts them to ensure they match the number of voting cardinals. Then each ballot is opened, recorded, and pierced with a needle through the word "Eligo" before being strung on a thread, a system designed to prevent both mistakes and manipulation. For election, a candidate must receive 2/3 of the votes. If no cardinal reaches this threshold after 3 days of voting, with 2 ballots each morning and 2 each afternoon, the process may briefly pause for prayer and discussion before resuming. If the deadlock persists after approximately 30 ballots, the cardinals may shift to simplified procedures requiring only an absolute majority. When a cardinal receives the necessary votes, the cardinal dean asks him, "Do you accept your canonical election as supreme pontiff?" Only upon his acceptance does he officially become pope. This question has occasionally received negative responses throughout history, as some cardinals have declined the papacy despite receiving sufficient votes. If he accepts, the new pope immediately chooses his papal name. This tradition began in the 6th century when a cardinal named Mercury felt it inappropriate for a pope to bear the name of a pagan god and chose the name John II. The name selection often signals the pope's priorities or the previous popes he wishes to emulate. The new pontiff is then led to the Room of Tears, a small chamber adjacent to the Sistine Chapel where he changes into papal vestments for the first time. The room's name derives from the overwhelming emotion many new popes experience upon realizing the immense responsibility they have accepted. Meanwhile, the senior cardinal deacon appears on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to make the famous announcement, "Habemus Papam," "We have a pope." He then proclaims the new pope's birth name and chosen papal name before the new pontiff emerges to deliver his first blessing, Urbi et Orbi, to the city of Rome and to the world. This entire electoral process operates without political parties, campaign speeches, or public debates. The cardinals are forbidden from making pre-conclave pacts or promises regarding who they will vote for. These prohibitions aim to keep the process focused on spiritual discernment rather than political bargaining. The historical development of the conclave reflects lessons learned from problematic papal transitions. The requirement that cardinals be locked in seclusion until they elect a pope originated in 1274 after a nearly 3-year papal vacancy prompted city officials in Viterbo, Italy, to lock the cardinals in the papal palace, remove its roof, and reduce their food to bread and water until they reached a decision. While these strict isolation procedures might seem archaic in our connected age, they serve important functions beyond tradition. The seclusion creates space for contemplation amid global scrutiny, allows cardinals to speak freely without media analysis of every word, and fosters the spiritual atmosphere Catholics believe necessary for discerning divine guidance in this crucial decision. The first days and weeks of a new papacy involve specific traditions that facilitate the transition of leadership while establishing the new pope's vision for the Church. This period typically combines ancient rituals with the individual pope's personal priorities, creating a blend of continuity and fresh direction. The day after election traditionally includes the new pope's first mass with the cardinals who elected him, held in the Sistine Chapel. This intimate liturgy represents the first act of communal worship led by the new pontiff before he begins public appearances. The homily delivered during this Mass often provides initial insights into his priorities and spiritual vision. Within days, the formal installation ceremony, known as the Papal Inauguration Mass, takes place in St. Peter's Square. Unlike coronations of the past, which included a literal crown, modern inaugurations center on the imposition of the pallium, a woolen band symbolizing the Pope's role as shepherd, and the Fisherman's ring, which the Pope will use to seal official documents. This ceremony typically draws world leaders, religious representatives, and hundreds of thousands of faithful from around the world. The new Pope then begins a series of meetings with the heads of Vatican departments, ambassadors accredited to the Holy See, and representatives of other religious traditions. These meetings establish working relationships while allowing the Pope to communicate his priorities to key stakeholders within and beyond the Catholic Church. One of the most significant early actions involves the Pope's appointments to key Vatican positions. While some officials automatically lose their positions when a pope dies or resigns, others continue serving until explicitly replaced or confirmed by the new pontiff. The appointments to positions like the Secretary of State, effectively the Vatican's Prime Minister, and heads of major departments signal the direction and management style the new papacy will take. The first encyclical, a major teaching document of a new pope, receives particular attention, as it typically outlines the theological and pastoral priorities that will characterize his pontificate. While some popes issue this document within months, others take longer as they develop their comprehensive vision. This document often becomes a reference point for understanding the central themes and concerns of the new papacy. Visiting the Church's peripheries has become an increasingly important early action for modern popes. While traditionally new pontiffs would first visit Italian parishes near Rome, recent popes have often prioritized travel to regions facing particular challenges or representing significant concerns. Pope Francis, for example, made his first trip outside Rome to Lampedusa, an island receiving numerous migrants crossing the Mediterranean, signaling his priority on migration issues. During this transition period, the global Church typically experiences what Vatican observers call a honeymoon phase, where Catholics across the ideological spectrum project their hopes onto the new pontiff. This period eventually gives way to more realistic assessment as the Pope's actual priorities and approaches become clearer through concrete decisions and teachings. For ordinary Catholics worldwide, the practical impact of a papal transition varies significantly. In regions where Catholicism is deeply integrated with cultural identity, the selection of a new pope represents a major national event, regardless of individual religious practice. In more secularized regions, the impact may be limited primarily to actively practicing Catholics. At the parish level, where most Catholics experience their faith, regular liturgical and community activities continue largely unchanged during transitions. Priests add the new pope's name to the Eucharistic prayer. Parish bulletins might feature his photo and biography, and occasional references to his teachings gradually appear in homilies and educational programs. What makes modern papal transitions particularly significant is their global media coverage. The conclave and inauguration receive extraordinary international attention, creating opportunities for the Church to communicate its message to audiences far beyond practicing Catholics. This media spotlight has increasingly influenced how transitions unfold, with greater emphasis on transparency and accessibility than in previous centuries. The first major documents and decisions of a new papacy receive heightened scrutiny as observers analyze them for continuity or contrast with previous leadership. Every word choice, ceremonial preference, and staffing decision becomes subject to intensive interpretation, as Vatican watchers attempt to construct a coherent narrative about the new pontificate's direction. Historical perspective reveals diverse patterns in how papal transitions affect church direction. Some new popes have dramatically redirected Vatican priorities, as when John XXIII unexpectedly called the Second Vatican Council, while others have maintained substantial continuity with their predecessors. This variation reflects Catholicism's complex balance between continuity and development in doctrine and practice. The pace of transition varies significantly as well. Some papal administrations implement structural changes rapidly, while others move more gradually after extended periods of consultation and assessment. These different approaches reflect both theological perspectives about church governance and the personal leadership styles of individual popes. What remains consistent across transitions is the Catholic belief that despite human factors involved in selection and governance, divine guidance ultimately oversees the process. The ancient prayer recited during the conclave, Veni, Creator Spiritus, Come, Creator Spirit, expresses this theological understanding that human processes serve as instruments through which divine purpose unfolds in church leadership. The historical patterns of papal transitions provide valuable context for understanding their significance beyond immediate procedural aspects. Throughout the Church's nearly 2,000-year history, these leadership changes have both reflected and influenced broader ecclesiastical and societal developments. Examining major historical transitions reveals how papal successions often mark significant turning points in church direction. The election of Gregory the Great, 596–04, during a period of Roman decline, initiated the papacy's expanded role in Western European governance as civil structures weakened. His transition from monastic life to papal leadership established patterns of spiritual authority within changing political landscapes that would characterize medieval church-state relations. The election of Innocent III, 1198–1216, represented another pivotal transition, marking the height of medieval papal power. His succession occurred as competing claims for temporal authority intensified across Europe, and his assertive leadership style established precedents for papal involvement in kingdoms, crusades, and doctrinal enforcement that defined the medieval church's expanded influence. The Renaissance papacy transitions, particularly following the election of Julius II, 1503-1513, demonstrated how papal succession could become entangled with artistic patronage, territorial ambitions, and familial interests. These complex transitions reveal the challenges of maintaining spiritual mission amid temporal concerns, tensions that eventually contributed to the Protestant Reformation. Perhaps no transition proved more consequential than the surprise election of John XXIII in 1958. As a 77-year-old who many assumed would be a caretaker pope, his unexpected decision to convene the Second Vatican Council, 1962-1965, dramatically reshaped Catholic practice and engagement with the modern world. This transition demonstrates how papal changes can produce unexpected directional shifts despite institutional continuity. The election of John Paul II in 1978, the first non-Italian pope in 455 years, signaled another significant transition that realigned Vatican priorities. His selection demonstrated the Church's increasingly global character while introducing influential emphases on combating communism, engaging youth, and articulating Catholic teaching amid cultural shifts. This transition's global impact illustrates how papal successions can reshape far more than internal church governance. The 2013 conclave, following Benedict XVI's historic resignation, created unprecedented transition dynamics with a former pope still living. Francis's election as the first Jesuit pope, first from the Americas and first from the Southern Hemisphere, represented multiple historic firsts, demonstrating how transitions can introduce perspectives previously underrepresented in Vatican leadership. These historical patterns reveal several consistent elements across papal transitions. First, they typically involve balancing continuity and change, maintaining essential theological and institutional continuity while allowing for new emphases and approaches. Second, they often reflect broader ecclesiastical and societal developments rather than operating in isolation from their historical context. Third, they frequently introduce leadership with backgrounds or perspectives that address emergent challenges facing the Church. Beyond these patterns, transitions have evolved to reflect changing communication technologies and global awareness. While medieval papal transitions primarily affected European politics and religious life, modern transitions receive immediate global coverage that shapes public perception and expectations. This expanded visibility has transformed how the Vatican manages transitions, with greater emphasis on transparency and accessibility than previous eras. The global nature of modern papal transitions reflects Catholicism's demographic evolution. While European cardinals dominated conclaves for centuries, the College of Cardinals now includes significant representation from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, regions where Catholicism is growing most rapidly. This internationalization creates transitions with increasingly diverse perspectives on the Church's global mission. Financial and administrative reforms often accelerate during transition periods. The interim between pontificates provides natural opportunities to evaluate systems and implement changes, particularly after long papacies where administrative practices may become entrenched. Recent transitions have featured enhanced scrutiny of Vatican financial structures, with new popes inheriting reform initiatives begun during their predecessors' final years. Or the Sede Vacante period. Diplomatic relationships frequently recalibrate during papal transitions, as the Holy See maintains the world's oldest diplomatic corps with relationships to most nations. New pontificates typically involve reassessing foreign policy priorities and approaches. Nations with significant Catholic populations or complex church-state histories pay particular attention to transitions for indications of how relations might evolve under new leadership. The ecumenical and interfaith dimensions of transitions have gained prominence in recent decades. Leaders from Orthodox, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, and other faith traditions now regularly attend papal installations, and early meetings with these leaders typically establish the new Pope's approach to interreligious dialogue. These relationships, often built through personal connections, frequently require recalibration during transitions. For ordinary Catholics, papal transitions create opportunities for renewed engagement with their faith tradition. Parish programs explaining conclave procedures and introducing the new Pope's background help connect local communities to global church leadership. This educational dimension of transitions serves important catechetical functions, particularly for younger generations experiencing their first papal change. The media narratives that emerge during transitions significantly influence public understanding of the new papacy. Initial framing of the Pope's background, priorities, and style often establishes interpretive frameworks that persist throughout his pontificate. These narratives develop rapidly during the first days and weeks, highlighting the importance of early communications during transition periods. What makes contemporary papal transitions particularly significant is their occurrence amid rapid societal changes affecting religious practice globally. In regions experiencing secularization, transitions present opportunities to reintroduce Catholic perspectives to audiences with limited religious engagement. In regions where Catholic practice remains vibrant but faces competing religious options, transitions establish frameworks for understanding distinctive Catholic contributions to broader societal questions. The historical significance of these transitions extends beyond religious considerations to their influence on global humanitarian, diplomatic, and ethical discussions. As one of the world's most visible moral voices, papal leadership transitions affect international conversations about peace, development, environmental protection, and human rights, areas where Catholic perspectives continue to influence policy discussions across diverse societies. The long-term impact of papal transitions extends far beyond immediate ceremonial aspects, shaping Catholic identity and influence through complex interactions between institutional continuity and leadership change. These succession moments represent unique opportunities to understand the dynamic balance between tradition and adaptation that characterizes the Church's approach to contemporary challenges. The spiritual dimension of transitions holds particular significance for practicing Catholics. Beyond institutional procedures, many believers view papal succession through theological lenses that understand these moments as demonstrations of divine providence working through human instruments. Prayers specifically composed for transition periods express this belief that despite human factors in selection, the process ultimately serves transcendent purposes beyond political considerations. This spiritual understanding informs the distinctive Catholic response to leadership change. Unlike political transitions that may dramatically reverse previous policies, papal transitions typically involve what theologians call development of doctrine. Evolutionary rather than revolutionary change that maintains essential continuity while allowing theological understanding to develop in response to new questions and contexts. This approach views change and continuity as complementary rather than contradictory. The Church's self-understanding as extending across time shapes how transitions function. Catholic tradition emphasizes that the Church spans past, present, and future, connecting current believers to both ancient tradition and generations yet unborn. This perspective creates an institutional mindset where changes occur within a framework of centuries rather than electoral cycles, moderating expectations for immediate directional shifts after leadership transitions. Nevertheless, papal transitions do create distinctive opportunities for institutional renewal. After long papacies especially, transitions allow reassessment of priorities, approaches, and structures that may have become fixed through extended leadership. The fresh eyes of new leadership often identify opportunities for development that continuity of personnel might otherwise overlook, even while maintaining doctrinal commitments. The governance aspects of modern transitions have evolved to address increasingly complex administrative challenges. While medieval popes managed relatively small curial staffs primarily focused on European affairs, modern pontiffs oversee global institutions addressing diverse challenges from humanitarian relief to educational systems to diplomatic relationships. Transitions now involve transferring oversight of multifaceted organizations, requiring specialized expertise beyond theological acumen. Technological developments continue reshaping transition dynamics. While previous centuries' information traveled slowly enough that many Catholics might learn of a new pope weeks or months after selection, digital communications now enable immediate global awareness of conclave results. This compressed timeline creates both challenges and opportunities, allowing rapid introduction of new leadership while compressing timeframes for thoughtful assimilation of change. The media environment surrounding transitions particularly influences how they shape Catholic identity. The initial narratives established during early coverage often create interpretive frameworks through which believers understand their new spiritual leader. These frameworks develop rapidly and may prove difficult to modify later, highlighting the importance of thoughtful communication during transition periods. The international diplomatic dimensions of transitions have gained complexity as Vatican influence extends beyond traditionally Catholic regions. Nations with various religious demographics and political systems maintain diplomatic relations with the Holy See, calibrating these relationships based partly on each pope's priorities and communication style. Transitions consequently affect international relationships ranging from humanitarian cooperation to religious freedom advocacy. The educational aspects of transitions serve important formational purposes within Catholic communities. Parish programs explaining conclave procedures, introducing the new pope's background, and contextualizing his early statements help connect local faith communities to global leadership changes. These educational moments provide opportunities to deepen understanding of both institutional processes and theological foundations underlying papal office. Economic considerations play increasingly visible roles in modern transitions. The Vatican's financial reforms in recent decades have often accelerated during leadership changes, as new administrations inherit both ongoing initiatives and fresh opportunities to implement structural improvements. The financial dimensions of transitions reflect broader tensions between institutional maintenance and mission advancement that characterize church governance. The ecumenical impact of transitions extends beyond ceremonial participation in inaugural events. Leadership changes create opportunities to reset relationships with other Christian denominations, recalibrate dialogue priorities, and potentially resolve long-standing theological disagreements. Recent transitions have demonstrated increasing comfort with acknowledging historical challenges while seeking new pathways toward Christian unity. Interfaith relationships similarly recalibrate during papal transitions. As one of Christianity's most visible global representatives, each pope establishes distinctive approaches to Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and other faith traditions through early meetings, statements, and symbolic actions. These developing relationships influence religious coexistence internationally, particularly in regions with complex inter-religious histories. For Catholic educational and healthcare institutions worldwide, transitions create moments for renewed connection to their founding missions. Schools, universities and hospitals operating under Catholic auspices often use leadership changes as occasions to re-examine institutional priorities, assess alignment with evolving church emphases, and introduce community members to Catholic social teaching as articulated by new leadership. The humanitarian dimensions of papal transitions deserve particular attention, given the Catholic Church's position as one of the world's largest non-governmental service providers. Organizations like Caritas Internationalis, Catholic Relief Services, and thousands of local Catholic charities maintain substantial humanitarian operations whose priorities sometimes shift to reflect new papal emphasis on specific populations or challenges. Religious orders and movements within Catholicism experience transitions distinctively based on their particular relationships with papal authority. Communities founded specifically to support papal initiatives may undergo significant reorientation during transitions, while those with more autonomous missions may experience minimal practical changes while maintaining communion with new leadership. Perhaps most significantly, papal transitions demonstrate Catholicism's distinctive approach to balancing universality and particularity. Each pope brings specific experiences, cultural perspectives, and pastoral priorities shaped by his background, yet assumes an office designed to serve global rather than particular interests. This tension between individual perspective and universal office creates fertile ground for developing responses to emerging challenges that maintain essential continuity while allowing for creative adaptation. The Church's experience managing transitions for nearly 2 millennia offers insights extending beyond religious contexts to broader questions about institutional continuity amid leadership change. The balance between established procedures and openness to fresh direction, between institutional memory and innovation, between symbolic continuity and practical adaptation. These tensions characterize many organizational transitions beyond ecclesiastical contexts. For Catholics and others interested in religious influence on contemporary societies, papal transitions provide unique windows into how ancient institutions navigate modern challenges through leadership succession. The distinctive Catholic approach, emphasizing continuity amid change, development rather than revolution, and spiritual discernment within institutional processes, offers contrasting perspectives to political transitions often characterized by pendulum swings between competing visions. As transitions unfold in coming years, their historical significance will likely be measured less by ceremonial details than by how effectively they enable the Catholic Church to address emerging challenges while maintaining its essential identity. Whether responding to technological disruptions, environmental concerns, changing family structures, interreligious tensions, or geopolitical developments, papal transitions create moments where institutional adaptation and foundational continuity interact to shape one of the world's oldest continuously functioning global institutions. Share, subscribe and comment with your thoughts on how religious leadership transitions compare to political succession in your experience. How do you see the balance between continuity and change playing out in various institutional contexts? Leadership transitions reveal institutional values more clearly than statements of principle ever could. What organizations maintain amid change and what they willingly transform tells us what they truly consider essential. Ronald Heifetz.